You only met the woman with the big rose-tinted tea-shades once before you agreed to meet. It's been a long time since anyone's ever tried to buy fentanyl off of you. You used to sell a lot of hard stuff, but you usually stick to psychedelics these days. Mushrooms, LSD, Molly, ecstasy, harmless stuff. The heat for Apache was getting too much, and coke and dope are too dangerous these days. Anyway, it's a college town. Rich kids always want to pretend like they're enlightened. The change in stock didn't impact your cash flow, just your clientele. But you know who everyone is by now. No one tries to buy Apache from you. You have a rep now. You're the trippy dealer. You have a bad feeling about this. But rent is due, and you're seeing a new person who's expensive and you want to impress them, so you're slinging more things than maybe you'd like to. You've already hawked more coke than you're used to, and you're thinking that maybe it's a good idea to pick up some more dope to sling on the rough side of town. Everyone's got to hustle. Cash is king. That's where Alessandra came in. Everything about her creeps you out. Her name sounds like a witch's or something. Maybe she's new in town or an exchange student, and that's why you've never heard of her before and why she thinks you sling Apache. Yeah, your reason that's got to be it. Anyway, it's not your place to know your customers, just to count cash and sell the stuff. So that's why you're in the alley between Papa John's and the Queen Laundromat behind Johnson Gym, waiting for Alessandra. Cash is king. You check your phone. She's 10 minutes late. Under normal, no-rent, cheap date circumstances, you would have scooped by now, but Alessandra wants a lot of Apache, and you don't like sitting on it. Makes you itchy. Makes you remember things you wish you didn't. You scroll through your Situationship's Instagram for a little longer while you wait, and when Alessandra doesn't show up, you give up. She doesn't want the stuff that badly if she's making you wait. That bad feeling creeps down your back again. You wonder if this was a setup. Adjusting your backpack, you check your phone one last time, but when you look up, you're faced with a brick wall. Astonished, you take a step back. Had you been facing a building before? No, that was unlikely. You always face the street for exchanges, back to the brick. But when you turn toward the alley's mouth into the street, it's another wall. Your heart pounds. What's happening? You whirl back around and the wall is gone. It's just a long alley now, longer than the short L-shaped corridor that used to be there. It's so long you can't see the end of it. It goes on infinitely, on and on like two mirrors facing each other. It repeats every 20 feet or so like it's copy-pasted. There's a plastic bag dancing in the breeze. Left, right, then up. Every 20 feet, left, right, then up, simultaneously. Dumpster, pile of beer cans, one rolling with the bag as it goes up, left, down. Dumpster, cans, bag, every 20 feet. You steady yourself against the wall with a hand. The effect of the alley is unsettling, disorienting, like your brain is an ice cube in a cocktail shaker with an inexperienced bartender. You turn around again. You run into another wall. There's only one way to go. Forward. Down the infinite hallway. Especially since the brick wall before you moves. The line of mortar squirms and writhes, and you briefly consider whether or not you took some of your own supply and forgot, or if you're really slipping and losing it. The lines wriggle and writhe and squirm. Writhe, squirm, and wriggle. You check your phone. No signal. You just had signal trying to get in touch with Alessandra. How is this possible? Something catches your eye. The wall pulses. The wall breathes. You stumble backward a few steps and fall on your ass. On the ground between your feet, someone has painted a giant arrow pointing in the direction of the infinite hallway. It glows bright yellow and definitely wasn't there before. You scramble to your feet and turn around. Start is written above the arrow. The plastic bag is gone, but the scattered beer cans remain. So do the dumpsters. Every 20 feet or so. You take a deep breath and walk. Clack, clack, clack. Your shoes echo off the walls, echoing again, echoing off of itself. Clack, clack, clack. Not an echo. Clack, clack, clack. A repetition. You walk on and on, passing the dumpster again and again. You stop and turn around, expecting to see an endless corridor of dumpsters and beer cans, but you don't. There's a wall. It's inches from your nose. You've held it together pretty well, but now you're convinced that either you were snuck a heroic dose of LSD or you've literally lost your mind. There's a third option. A thought skitters through your mind. You've overdosed, and this is hell. That thought lingers longer than you want it to. You won't sell Apache anymore, but you use it. Not often, but often enough. Apache can get dangerous if you're sloppy. You run your hands over the brick wall. It's rough and dry, the stippled texture biting against your palm and fingertips. If you can feel it, it must be real, right? Like a knife, the heavy odor of ozone cuts across the air. As if it couldn't get any worse, fat raindrops plop onto your head. You turn around again, hopefully for the last time, and see the alley has changed. Once more. A checkered line runs the width of the alley. In the same neon yellow lettering as before is written, "Finish." And beyond it, light and music and color. It's a carnival. A voice calls out to you, "Come, come into the light where it's warm and dry." It's colder than it should be, and you're getting wetter than you should, and now you're shivering. You step into the light. It's warm, and there's no rain here. Not a single drop. You hold out your hand to check, but there's nothing. Looking up into the sky, you see the torrent of rain, but it seems to stop where the light ends. When you return your gaze to the carnival, a beaming man stands before you. Everything about him is bright. His hair is dyed in electric orange, and his handsome smile radiates exuberance. Shiny silver sequins line his white suit in tight lines. The man extends his hands to either side of his body, palms raised to the sky, and announces, "Welcome to the Pound of Flesh Carnival! So glad you could make it. We've been expecting you." You express confusion and raise a skeptical eyebrow. Yes, of course." The man turns to extend a hand to the carnival, his smile still trained on you. "Where would you like to start?" You're still processing everything before you. The tents, striped in bright neon pastel, seem to maintain the same uncertain movement as the bricks in the alley, making the stripes wiggle. The air, warm like an oven that's been open for a while, is glittered with frenetic music that's a cross between a calliope tune and dubstep. The energy of the place is chaotic. You'd normally be all about it, but something about the carnival doesn't sit right with you. Maybe it's the fact that it's at the end of an impossible corridor. Maybe it's the fact that your guide has a pair of horns sprouting from his forehead. Whatever the reason, you don't want to take a step forward. But when you look back, there's nothing. Beyond the ring of light, there's only darkness, black and perfect like a solid wall. Once again, you've got nowhere to go but forward. The white suit playfully slaps your arm and his smile becomes impossibly bigger.
That's the spirit. Let's start with dancing. That'll get you in the mood. Come on, it'll be fun!
The man grabs your hand and pulls you into the carnival.
Let's go!
You stumble behind him, more to keep yourself from falling flat on your face than to follow after him.
My name is Felix,
he says, casting a glance over his shoulder.
You are going to love it here.
You ask him where here even is. He throws back his head and laughs again. He moves with the confidence of someone who doesn't need to watch where he's going. There's not much he has to avoid, however. Aside from the tents and the booths, the carnival is empty. The rows are abandoned, filled only with the strange music. Even the stalls with prizes, grotesque stitched playthings, unpleasant baubles, irreverent clothing with text scrawled in incomprehensible language, stand unattended. A scrap of paper drifts across the main thoroughfare. You ask Felix where everyone is.
Well, the rave tent is packed.
He points to a tent with flashing lights pushing through the striped fabric. It seems to be the music's source. Felix pulls you to the entrance and then lets you go. He gestures to the entrance flap.
Go on. They're waiting.
You hesitate. You look back. But the ring of light is even smaller now, as if the carnival has shrunk or the darkness has encroached upon it. The music is so loud it shakes your gut with every boom of the heavy, frequent bass. Reluctantly, you open the flap and step inside. Felix wasn't wrong. The tent is packed with bodies pushing and gyrating against each other. It's like the whole tent is dancing with each other, and you're unable to decipher where one person ends and the other one begins. They're lean and smooth and beautiful, dressed in glow sticks and blacklight paint and shorts and mesh shirts. They stroke each other with hungry hands, body rubbing against body, generating heat like match heads against striker strips. The scene is both erotic and grotesque. There is temptation to join, to be swept away in the hedonistic revelry, but it reminds you of something, and you recoil. But when you turn back, there is no entrance flap. You approach the tent's wall and place your hands against it. It's as solid as steel. You cannot go back. You can only go forward. Your thoughts are interrupted by hands running down your back. You whirl around to see a woman with a butterfly painted on her cheek, smiling at you, pressing her body against yours. You back away, bumping into the tent wall. A shirtless man approaches you from the side, a candy necklace draping long and low over the rippling muscles of his torso. He strokes your face, but you're too frightened of him to smack his hand away. Aside from his approach, something about him is dangerous. That's when a third body, one you cannot see for fear of letting the big man out of your sight, approaches and touches you also. You freeze with fright, unable to act or think when a voice, clear and bold, emerges from the crowd. Leave him alone. You can't believe you can hear it over the din, but it's clear and resonant, like a sonic arrow landing a bullseye. The bodies retreat, disappearing into the sea of others, gone as if they'd never existed. But they did exist, and their existence in the crowd casts a dark shadow over it in your heart. You look startled. Relax, they're harmless. You're just here for a little fun. The expression reminds you of the same thing as before, though it is closer now. You remember a mistake, something horrible, something that changed your entire approach to the business. The Rohypnol. They're just here for a little fun. The woman comes close to you. She has rose-colored T-shades and long black hair pulled into a ponytail, and she's not dressed like the dancers. She has baggy parachute pants and a black cropped tank top. Beneath the pretty eyes, behind the rose-colored T-shades, a vicious sneer slashes across her face. Alessandra. You want to ask her what this place is. You want to ask her why she didn't show up, because you blame her untimeliness for all of this. If only she'd been there when she was supposed to, you wouldn't be in this hellish carnival surrounded by thirsty freaks. Come with me. Let's dance. You don't want to dance, but you don't have a choice. Your feet step forward without your consent as you follow her, pulled through the throng, unwilling. The crowd parts as you move through it. No one acknowledges you, yet you know all attention is fixated on you. You can feel it. Feel the sidelong glances searching your body, looking for something. It's when you reach the center of the tent and the big clearing on the dance floor that you notice the screen. It's massive, taking up a quarter of the tent from floor to ceiling. You didn't notice it before because the strobing lights made the abstract designs projected onto it irrelevant except perhaps for someone on a trip, but now it displays a film of some sort, like a home movie. As you watch, you recognize what you're seeing. The house party. There were many house parties, but this one stands out. You remember it well because it was the last time you sold roofies. They used to be your bread and butter. You knew what they were for. There's basically only one thing roofies are for, but you didn't care. There's always rent to pay. There are always pretty people to please. But after that house party, to your surprise, your feet move you into the clearing on the dance floor. Your body moves to the rhythm of the music as you watch the screen. You see the man. His name was Chad. He had blonde, slick back hair, brown eyes, and square shoulders. Chad came to the party like a hungry lion stalking prey. You knew he was trouble from the start. He had a look in his eyes, a vicious jeer slicing across his face, an unpleasant swagger in his walk. But again, you didn't care. After all, everyone was just there for a little fun, one way or another. Cash is king. You sold him the roofies. He told you it was a pleasure doing business with you. You didn't think anything of it. You went about your night slinging tabs and bags of white powder. No one else asked for roach. As the night went on, you saw Chad with a slim, pretty girl with blue hair. She seemed annoyed, like she didn't want to be there, or maybe she just didn't want to be with him. Chad was laughing with some other guys, and the girl stared out into space. Smoothly. So smooth it had to be practiced. As if he did it all the time, Chad sprinkled powder into her drink and went on laughing. One of the guys gave him a high five. On the dance floor, the music's pace quickens. You start moving faster and faster, and you're having a hard time keeping up with what your body commands you to do. Sweat pours down your face, and everyone is watching you. Everyone is smiling. Everyone is laughing and watching you. You're moving in ways you didn't know you could, never even wanted to, striking poses that make you uncomfortable in more ways than one. The throng around you cheers and laughs and exchanges high fives with each other. On the screen, time passes. You moved through the house to grab a beer from the kitchen before returning to the room where you and some others staked things out. You passed by an open bedroom door. The girl with the blue hair lay on the bed, with Chad half-dressed on top of her. Despite his thrusts, she was limp and unresponsive. As you watch the screen, your legs give out beneath you. The throng cheers louder. Although your limbs can no longer support your weight, they will not stop moving. You try to look away from the screen, but your body disobeys. You try to close your eyes, but your lids have claimed independence from your will. They want you to look, to watch, even as you convulse upon the floor, drenched in your own sweat. The day after the house party, you went to the laundromat. One day you'd have your own house with your own washing machine, but for now, you were content to scroll through TikTok on your phone while the machine thundered along with a dozen others. There, at Queen's Laundromat on Central, you saw a girl with blue hair. At first, you couldn't believe it was the same girl. You didn't recognize her because the blue in her hair was mostly washed out, but the more you studied her, the more you realized it must be her. You recognized the shape of her nose and the slant of her eyes. You recognized the cut of her hair. The scene from the house party, with her limp body passed out on the bed, was burned into your memory with more horrific effect than you realized. You tried not to care. You tried to dismiss it. You thought about the money. $15. That's what you charged for the pill. Chatbot 6. The girl with the blue hair searched her purse for what you assumed must be coins, and when none turned up, she dug into her pockets. She pulled pants out of her laundry bag and searched them. Her jaw clenched hard like a crab claw. She tried not to cry, but she didn't do a very good job of it. You realize that she must have showered a lot because her hands appear dry. That must be why the dye, which must have been temporary, just for fun, why the dye is faded. You approach her, and without a word, laid $15 on top of the washing machine. You walked away. In the rave tent, you spasm on the floor. Your head cracks against the hard concrete surface again and again. You realize that the music stopped, but you don't know when, and the dancers have stopped moving. Everyone faces you, watching you, and the open clearing closes in around you slowly as the dancers advance. You cannot rely on your body for protection. It has been taken from you by unseen forces. The strangers around you are frightening, unknown dangers. They close in, and your forced vulnerability makes you fear them. You do not know what they will do to you, but you know that people can hurt you, and you are afraid. Once they reach you, they don't stop pressing in. They step on your hands, your forearms, your shins, your biceps, your groin, and your gut. Shoes press against your forehead and jaw, and you feel the strain on your tendons, and the music starts again. And they dance. Your flesh pulverizes. Your joints snap. Your bones break. The pain is incomprehensible. There is a blackness.
Game over!
Felix announces cheerfully. His voice pulls you back from nothingness. No sight, no sound, no darkness nor light. Oblivion. In it, you were left with nothing but your thoughts. They were not good bedfellows. Now you are back in the carnival's thoroughfare, on your back. Your body aches, but you are physically whole. Psychically, the death has left you more than shaken. Was it a nightmare? None of this could be real. They got into your memories, not to mention the insanity of the space. What did you take that you forgot? Felix extends a hand to help you up.
The rave tent can get a little hectic. Ready for the next attraction?
You reject the hand and push yourself up to your feet. You ask him what happened. Your guide smiles again, extending his arms wide.
You've traveled through the first death! Congratulations!
You think to ask what that means, but you also think it will be pointless.
You are absolutely right. Here at the Pound of Flesh Carnival, we offer an experience, not an explanation.
You ask about the name, repeating it as if you want to make sure you heard it correctly.
That's right. It's so named because that's the price of admission.
Startled, you're about to ask what that means when Felix pulls you forward.
Onward!
Your footsteps ring out like gunshots in the empty carnival. It's then that you realize the music no longer plays. With the tents rising up like mausoleums, the carnival reminds you of a graveyard. Like a massive tombstone rising up from the flat concrete carnival grounds, you see the booth where Felix is taking you. It's illuminated by a cone of neon pink light which has no source. Above it, in Wild West Saloon-style font, a sign reads, Shooting Gallery. When you get there, music starts that reminds you of a slot machine's wind jingle. Along the booth's far wall, 3 lines of wooden ducks pop up, and then, between the ducks, bullseyes emerge. Before you lies a subcompact 9mm. You used to carry a gun like this. You even had to use it a few times, though always for show. The thought of actually hurting someone makes your stomach churn. But after the raid, you stopped packing. You had first-hand experience with what these things can do. You remember the sound of gunfire. You remember the screams. You remember seeing the girl with the blue hair hit the floor.
Hit all the targets to win a prize!
You start to mention your aversion to guns when you hear a click behind you and something presses against the back of your head. A cold sweat drapes over your body.
Someone's gonna shoot today, one way or another!
The gun releases its pressure on the back of your head and fires right beside your ear. One of the ducks falls backward, and plinking music grows louder. The gun presses up against your head again. From the side, Felix pops his head into your field of vision.
That one doesn't count. We'll have to reset!
As the ducks move across the track, one of them pops up to fill the gap between 2 targets. The music returns to its previous volume, but it's hard to tell if that's just the ringing in your ears. Behind you, the gun cocks again.
Better hurry! Seems like our judge is trigger-happy today!
Your hands quake as you fumble with the gun. The muzzle oscillates madly as you try to steady your grip and aim. You fire. The first shot misses. The gunman behind you moves the pistol to your shoulder. Pain tears through your body like a hot, serrated blade. You cry out and put a hand out to steady yourself against the booth, but you reach out with the wounded shoulder and it only hurts more. Your knees wobble and you gasp for breath. The gunman grips the back of your shirt and pulls you to your feet. Tears soak your face, though you don't know when they started. The gun presses against your head again. You stand as straight as you can and try to aim through the tears. You know you'll miss, and you think of the pain, but you're more afraid of what will happen if you don't shoot. Your wounded arm is useless, so you raise the gun with one hand, and it trembles wildly at the end of your good arm. You aim the gun at the track. And take a deep, stuttering breath in. Squeeze the trigger. Though you know the gunshot is from the 9mm in your hand, it still makes you flinch, partly because you're waiting for the pain to tear through the other side of your body. Instead, Felix cheers.
Congratulations! That's one target down, only 12 more to go!
You wipe your eyes with the back of the hand holding the gun and look at Felix. He wags a finger at you.
Be careful of how many bullets you use. You only have 4 more left.
6 bullets total. 13 targets. You stammer to Felix that it's impossible, that you can't possibly hit all the targets, but he only tuts at you and shakes his head.
That's what you brought, so that's what you get.
You know exactly what he's talking about. You brought the 9mm to the party that got raided. The police crashed the party because they'd heard a dealer was moving a bunch of Apache there. That dealer was you. They swarmed over the place like cockroaches, and you remember thinking that you couldn't believe that the cops would care that much about you, that you were small time, nothing special, but then you thought about the couple hundred Apache pills in your Hello Kitty backpack, and you realized someone must have tipped them off. The gun presses hard against your other shoulder. You drop the 9mm and sink to your knees. Somewhere in your mind, pieces are coming together, but you're not sure how they fit. Something tells you it has to do with the girl with the blue hair. She was at both house parties. She bought Apache off you that night. She bought a lot, and by the looks of her, you weren't her first dealer. The only way you recognized her was with the hair. She was emaciated and had the 1,000-mile stare of a junkie, where she'd look at you, but she was looking right through you. Lost in her head, lost in the proposition of another pill. You didn't even know her name. She got shot that night during the raid. You sold her $100 worth of pills. Way more than enough to kill someone. You wonder if fate intervened before she could take her own life. She didn't die. The voice didn't come from Felix, but rather from behind you. Alessandra. You fling your body lamely to face her. She peers down at you through her pink tea shades, and you peer up into the barrel of her gun. A subcompact 9mm. Her name was Evangelina, Alessandra says, and points the gun at your right thigh. She fires. You scream. We called her Eva. She points the gun at your other thigh and fires again. You scream once more. She didn't die that night. She lived, but she suffered a fate worse than death. Alessandra levels the barrel with your head and pulls the trigger once more. The pain is less this time, and it's quicker. Oblivion descends upon you faster. But you remain in that wretched void for longer. It feels like weeks, months, maybe even years. You remain in that nothingness, not even darkness to keep you company, where time and sensation do not dare tread. It is that chiptune sound that brings you back. It summons dread. You wonder what fresh hell awaits you now.
Congratulations! You've suffered the second death!
With bitter sarcasm lacing your spittle, you ask Felix how many more you have to suffer. He steps into your field of vision and extends a hand. Once more you reject it, choosing to stand up on your own.
One more like that one, and then you risk suffering the true death!
He jumps into the air and spins, extending his arms wide.
Isn't it exciting?
In Oblivion, you had time to think. That was all you could do there. And while you thought, you considered if you'd come back to the Pound of Flesh Carnival, wondered if you'd paid your entrance yet. You realized that it wasn't admission you were really paying for. It was escape. You'd have to endure whatever torments Felix and Alessandra cook up for you. Otherwise, you'll be stuck here forever. So you don't let Felix take your hand. You just ask him where you need to go so you can get over it. He beams.
That's the spirit! There's so much more to see at the carnival! Next up is the freak show!
You march down the thoroughfare, and Felix cartwheels ahead, then bounces to his feet and keeps pace slightly ahead.
This way!
He cheers, pointing down an alley. Despite the light surrounding the rest of the carnival, the alley is dark and damp. A glistening sheen of moisture coats the dull brick, and water pools on the asphalt passageway, reflecting the faint light with such disorienting distortion that you struggle to walk straight. In the distance, you hear a dull roar and a muted crackling. From what little you know about freak shows, you know them to be sideshows, side attractions, and generally smaller than the rest of the tents. You expect a tent maybe half as small, if not smaller, than the rave tent. The alley curves and the roaring sound gets louder, and at first, you think it's a crowd. But as you approach the alley's opening, you notice orange light seep over the asphalt, dancing over the water's reflections. And then, abruptly, you come to the mouth of the alley faced with a great, towering skyscraper. It is tall and black, and you've never seen so much fire in one place. Orange barbs leap out of blackened, broken windows. The stink of smoke makes you cough, though the massive black cloud lifts into the sky far, far above your head. It builds into a pinwheel, spinning above a squared, red cross. A hospital. You realize that this isn't actually a skyscraper, but rather a massive hospital. It must have hundreds of floors. But when you bring your gaze down from the tongues of flame and the swirling plume of smoke, you notice derelict ambulances, missing wheels, cracked windshields, peeling discolored paint, parked in a bay marked emergency. With the sweep of his arm, Felix gestures to the revolving door which spins slowly and continuously at the tower's foot.
Step right in! You are in the show of your life. What sorts of monstrosities await you inside?
You tell Felix that he's not exactly selling it.
Have courage! The world is only as frightening as you are.
You realize that doesn't assuage your unease at all. But you think about the realization you had in Oblivion, and take a deep breath before approaching the burning tower. The heat is intense. It radiates from the windows in invisible waves, moving in rhythm with the flames' dance, waxing and waning as the flames flicker out and in. You time your entrance with the revolving door's spin, stepping between the glass panels, and then you're in. And it's a perfectly normal hospital. The floor is polished white linoleum. The walls are white. The white fluorescent tubes lining the ceiling shine bright, sterile light. From the overhead speakers, a woman's gentle voice calls a code, and soft, bland music plays. But like the carnival, the hospital is otherwise empty. No one stands behind the receptionist's desk. No one sits in the chairs before it. No people in white coats tracing the white floors. It is empty, but it is not barren. You feel life here. All the doors to the patient's rooms are closed. You approach one and peer through the rectangular window. Inside, you have a hard time understanding what you're seeing because the room is full of red tubes. They clutter the space, filling it up from floor to ceiling, crowding the corners and barely providing space for you to peer inside. except for the center. There is a clearing, and in it, a man hangs suspended from the ceiling by shackles clamped to his thin wrists. His chest is a massive red wound, the rib cage pried apart with clamps. His chest cavity is empty. Organs float in vats mounted on pedestals around him. A stomach, a pile of intestines, a pair of lungs, a human heart, and tubes run from the grotesque, pumping flesh and into various parts of the man's body. It is evident that he is conscious, and it is clear that he can do nothing about it. He does not want to be here, and meets your eyes with both agony and disgust. You move on. In the next room, a woman is strapped to a bed as a man in a white coat saws away at her leg below the knee. Similar treatment has been given to her arms, you can tell, because they have been replaced with prosthetics. You pass nightmare after nightmare, witnessing one horror after another in the rooms, each one more bizarre and horrifying than the last. But the room at the end of the hall is normal. It is plain, and it is white, and it is still and quiet. There are flowers, many, many flowers, around the bedside and along the windowsill. In the bed lays a woman with blue hair. Eva. In the chair beside her, Alessandra sits with her hands folded in her lap. She looks up from her sister, noticing you. She beckons with a quick gesture of her hand. You enter. I told you she didn't die, but she didn't exactly live either. She motions to Eva in the bed, who you see now has a feeding tube. At her head and around the walls, partly obscured by flowers, there stands a dozen different machines with different monitors. The machines beep out of time with the Muzak. The bullet missed her organs and she survived. Alessandra strokes Evangelina's cheek with a tenuous hand, as if she is afraid too much pressure might break her sister. It was a miracle, the doctor said, that the bullet only damaged her spinal cord. She looks up at you, and there is no gratitude in her face. She gestures at the machines behind her sister. Does this look like a miracle to you? Fed by tubes, her heart can't beat by itself. Did you know that? She puts her hand on one of the monitors. It registers a heartbeat line that bounces with the music. They have her hooked up to a defibrillator. It beats the heart for her. She can't even breathe on her own. Alessandra moves to another machine with a large bellows inside a round glass case. It sighs as it stands up straight and then compresses itself back down. Alessandra continues. She's on a respirator. For all intents and purposes, she's dead. My sister is dead, and you killed her. You begin to protest. It was the cops, you say. It was the cops who killed her. You say that you don't understand why she's doing this to you when she should be going after them, because they're the ones responsible. You didn't fire the gun. You explain that you don't carry a gun anymore because of how that night impacted you. Alessandra's hair rises like it's conducting static electricity. Her face contorts. Behind the rose-colored glasses, her eyes flash into obsidian orbs, and the shock of the transformation cuts your words off in mid-speech. You stumble backward to get away from her, but you hear the hospital door slam shut behind you. She raises her hands, fingers pointed at you, and snarls. You set everything in motion. She's the living dead because of you. Alessandra flings her hands forward, and your lungs fill with air. They expand so greatly that it is uncomfortable. You try to move, but you're stunned. Your legs lock, your arms freeze, your jaw tightens, and all you can feel is your lungs filled to bursting. How does it feel? How does it feel when someone else has control of your body? She pulls her hands back in toward her chest, and your lungs contract, letting out the air inside. She holds it there, and you feel the need to breathe. It closes in on you like a pressure. It's as if your blood is screaming for oxygen, and the force of its voice presses outward on your chest, neck, and face. You want to flail, to shake and scream, but you can't. Your body is no longer your kingdom. You no longer hold the keys. Alessandra pushes her hands outward again, and you suck in delicious air. It spreads through your veins and soaks into your body like water into cloth. But then, she keeps pushing her hands further, and your lungs keep expanding, and expanding, and expanding. The very skin of the organ stretches to its limit. If it pushes any further, you feel it might tear. Alessandra stops her hands. She maintains the hold, like a conductor sustaining the note. Tears bead at your eyes, and in that moment, your greatest wish is to die. She shakes her head. No, I won't let you off that easily. With her head, she gestures to Eva. She doesn't get to die that easily, and neither will you. So she continues. Hands pull in, she holds them there. Hands push out, she holds them there. Every time she pulls further and pushes slower, pulls slower and pushes further. Every time it compresses your lungs flatter and flatter and expands them out past the point you thought they'd burst. You don't know how long this goes on for. Like the oblivion you experience during death, time warps. It is both far too fast and far too slow, like parallel lanes of traffic running in opposite directions side by side, one congested and full and the other free and clear. You want to tell her you're sorry. You want to tell her that you regret everything, that if you could go back in time, you'd change every choice you made. You want to tell her that you've never been more aware of the scum that you are until now. You know now that you are wrong, that you made too many mistakes, and that you wish you'd lived your life differently, better, and though that doesn't change anything, something black, gangrenous, and shameful ferments in your heart. Remorse. You've made many mistakes in your life, but none of them have hit you as hard as this one. You expected when you imagined other people feeling this kind of grief, that it would tear through them like a burning blade, but it's not sharp pain. It's slow, seeping, septic, and scathing. When you think it can't feel any worse, it sinks lower. You're frozen, so your face can't contort, but tears still flow down your cheeks. Alessandra smiles as she pulls her hands in all the way to her chest and holds them there. When she pushes them back out, she is laughing. She keeps it slow for a while longer, her head thrown back in laughter. But then, she speeds up. It isn't a slow change. It is sudden and jarring. In, out, in, out, in, out, in, out. She pushes and pulls so quickly that you barely have time to take in air or push it out. Your vision blurs, your head swims, and you can't think. Nothing makes sense. She's forcing you to hyperventilate. Your hands start to tingle. Pain blossoms in your chest. You feel like fainting, but under Alessandra's control, you're like a puppet hanging limply from strings. She moves her hands faster and faster, and you feel like you're about to pass out, and then she slows it down to regular speed. She straightens her back and raises her chin. That's what it's like. She turns her attention to her sister in the hospital bed, hands still moving at a regular pace. She can't breathe on her own. The machine does that for her. Her heart won't beat on its own. The machines do that too. The only thing that still works on its own is her brain. But she's in such a deep sleep that it doesn't matter. She turns her gaze upon you again. That's all she is. A brain in a vat. She pushes her hands out again, slowly, and your lungs expand and expand and expand. Her face darkens and she snarls. There's nothing that I could do to you that would ever be enough, so I'll settle for this. Alessandra pushes further and further, and the membrane of your lungs tear. You can feel it, practically hear it, like a sheet being rent in half. There is a sudden release of tension. You expect to hear a pop, but of course there isn't one. There is a ringing in your ears, though. You try to gasp for breath, but you can't. This is worse than what you suffered before. Where there was fear and pain before, now there is panic and agony. Alessandra's hands drop to her side. Her control over you is relinquished, and you collapse into a writhing heap. You can't moan or scream because your lungs, burst like an overfilled tire, are incapable of filling. Your limbs grow weaker and weaker as you needlessly, mindlessly flail on the ground. Your movements are slow and lethargic. A black ring closes around your vision, darkening the world by degrees, and your only solace is that Felix promised that this time was the last time, the last death before the true death.
Oblivion doesn't stretch so long this time, nor is it so maddening. You've spent so much time there that it's almost comforting. You enjoy the silence and the peace. You wonder if that's what it's like to be in the womb, existing in nothing, suspended in senselessness, oblivious to problems around you. You understand now why so many love their mothers more than their fathers. The womb is such a tranquil place. The bright, candy-coated lights and chipper chip-tune melody of the carnival scorches in comparison to the quiet stillness of oblivion. You squeeze your eyes shut and try to force it all out as you lay sprawled on the ground. You want it all to go away. You want to go back to oblivion.
There's one more attraction to see!
Felix's buoyant voice hurts more than the music or the lights. You wince at its cheeriness and enthusiasm. His footsteps bring him close. You wish you could close your ears.
Up, up! Time to rise! Time to experience everything the carnival has to offer!
You roll away from his voice and try to ignore him. You hope he'll leave, but you know there's little chance of that. You have to endure the final attraction, but you feel like you did as a teenager, asking your parents for just 5 more minutes before you have to face the day. You'd do that forever, you think. You'd lie there on the ground and wait, and wait, and wait, rather than suffer through another gruesome death. And something about Felix's tone, the banal sunniness perhaps, indicates that this will be the worst of them all.
Wake up, sleepyhead! There's more to see!
You continue to ignore him. Felix's feet scuffle on the pavement, and then pain explodes in your exposed back near a kidney, forcing your eyes open to drink in the neon glare. You gasp and cough against the pain.
I see I have your attention! Let's go now!
You're still reeling from the kick and can't respond. Felix takes that to mean obstinance, so he kicks you again.
Up and at 'em!
You sputter again and raise a hand in deference. You tell him you're coming, just give you a second. Felix replies,
Okay, 1 Mississippi.
Then he kicks you again. You try to cry out, but the wind is knocked out of you. You roll away from him and tell him to stop, that you're getting up now. Pushing yourself to your feet with geriatric speed, a deep ache racks your whole body. You wonder if it's an after effect of the last 2 deaths. Felix turns sidelong and with a flamboyant gesture directs you down the thoroughfare.
Onward to the revival!
You ask what he means by that, but he's already bounding off down the thoroughfare. You don't waste time, a little scared about what fresh hell he has in store for you if you don't advance quickly enough. You jog after him as he bounces and skips to what you ascertain is the center of the carnival. You see the peak of what you assume is your destination, rising above the other tents like a monument. It's the big top, the main attraction. You think about what you know about revivals. Sinners repent. People are baptized. How can this possibly go wrong? But you've been here long enough to know Alessandra will find a way. You wonder how she set this up. You're long past the point where you wonder if this is real. It doesn't matter anymore. It's affected you all the same. If this is a trip, it's the strongest one you've ever had. You won't come down from it the same. In that way, it's real. All of this is real, even if it isn't tangible. At the door to the tent, Felix strikes a pose and flourishes toward the door.
Enter and testify.
You hear the crowds roar before you enter. Their heat emanates from the flap, and you are reminded of the rave. The tent is much, much bigger, and it sounds like there are many more people. You wonder if you'll be trampled again, and the memory of that death sends a shiver down your spine. You doubt that's what's in store for you here, but you can't help but relive the weight of their feet crushing your flesh. You hesitate. With a smile, Felix grabs your shirt collar and casts you into the tent. You stumble inside. A wall of roaring cheers erupts around you and you whirl around to see the source. But the stands are empty. The entire tent is empty. All except an old galvanized steel washtub in the center of the ring. You look behind you to see if Felix followed, but there's no flap anymore. In fact, the tent walls have taken on the shiny quality of painted stone. You reach out a hand to investigate, confirming that it is indeed hard like a rock. You're trapped. There's nowhere to go but forward toward the center of the ring. As you approach the old washtub, voices from the invisible crowd solidify into precise words. You can only just barely make out the chant, though you strain your ears to hear until you reach the center. Then, a voice that sticks out like a crooked nail from the audience screams, "Testify!" That's what they're chanting, over and over again. The crowd's words fall in line after that, and the spattered pieces of the chant align at last. Testify, testify, testify. And that's when you see that the metal tub is full. It's a thick, viscous fluid, dark red like cherry syrup, but smells like pennies and old meat. It's blood. You realize the giant washtub is full of blood. A voice booms close to your ear.
Brothers and sisters, are you ready for testimony?
The crowd breaks its chant to roar a wordless confirmation. You whirl around to be greeted by a figure in a long black frock coat, vest, and red striped tie. On his head is a sharp black bowler. It takes you a second to process precisely what you're seeing, but when you do, you take an involuntary step away out of shock. Half the figure's face is that of a normal, handsome man. The other half is a blood-smeared skull flecked with amoebas of black, rotting flesh. The man, if he can be called that, raises his arms to his sides and turns to address the entire audience.
Brothers and sisters, are you ready for the truth?
More cheers and wild applause. The man whirls around and points a finger out in your direction.
This individual has committed many sins, many sins, too many for me to name, but tonight they come out.
He spins around to face the invisible audience and pumps a fist into the air.
Tonight, all sins will be cleansed.
Testify, 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 testify. Beside the metal tub, you notice a wooden coat rack that you are certain was not there before. It appears as naturally as if it had always been there, as if it belonged there. The half-rotten preacher takes off his frock coat and hangs it on the rack, then removes the obsidian cufflinks from his starched white shirt to roll the sleeves up to his elbows. His left arm is bone, like his face, scattered with mottled Stygian flesh. He approaches the tub with arms still outstretched, a solemn expression marking the fleshy half of his face. He flexes his fingers like a pianist preparing for a solo, and then dunks his hands into the bloodbath like he's looking for something. Rolling up his sleeves was a useless task as he buries his arms up to the biceps in the blood, deeper than the tub actually goes, and blood soaks his shirt. The cotton fabric absorbs the saturated blood all the way up to the preacher's deltoids. The crowd cheers louder. The preacher cries out and begins pulling something out of the washtub. By the time his forearms rise out, a head emerges from the blood, mouth open in a scream. The blood is so thick that at first it captures the figure's scream in a bubble that expands to the size of a baseball before popping in his face. The figure's scream is blood-curdling, tearing over the happy crowd like a hawk and, at least momentarily, drowning it out. Testify. Testify, testify, testify. The figure, a man, emerges from the washtub, born again in blood, and flops out onto the straw floor on all fours, coughing up blood. He stands up on shaky legs and passes his gaze over the invisible audience, the preacher, until finally landing on you. He raises a hand and points in your direction. You're the one who ruined my life! He tries to lunge for you but loses his balance and stumbles forward to his knees like a newborn lamb. You destroyed my life and I bet you don't even remember me, you miserable sack of shit! The preacher swings his hand through the air and raises his face to the ceiling.
Testify! Let go of your rage and sorrow and testify!
It's hard to tell with the blood, but you're certain that you've never seen this man before in your life. He could be right. The times you sold Apache were dark days for you. There's a lot you don't remember, and many sins you haven't paid for. My wife used to buy mushrooms off of you. That's
all she wanted. She said she wanted to find herself and that shrooms were a hack. She met you at a bar and you took her into a corner and told her all about how psychedelics would solve all her problems. He's back on his feet now, stumbling toward you with more confidence. The excess blood has dripped off his face, revealing a sticky red visage of malice. It only took a few trips before you upsold her LSD. While you were alarmed by the man's malice, you weren't surprised by his story. You still tried to upsell clients LSD. It was easier to store and provided better margins. Nothing shocking there. You keep stepping backward toward the edge of the Big Top's ring. The man is close. Closer than he should be. Every couple of steps he jerks forward like the ground beneath his feet has suddenly shrank and he lurches an extra 3 feet. He will get you if you don't think of something fast. He continues explaining his plight. She took a massive dose because you made her feel so confident, because you made her feel special. You sold her a heroic amount and I bet you turned a blind eye. Business is business, I bet you said to yourself. He's gasping for breath as if the effort of moving takes a lot out of him. She was bipolar, you lousy fuck. She had the worst trip of her life and had flashbacks for months. She was convinced people were trying to kidnap her, that I was trying to kidnap her. He lunges, this time with his full capacity. He wraps his hands around your throat before you can dodge out of the way. He knocks you onto your back and your head slams against the concrete beneath the straw. You see stars. By the throat, he raises you up, then slams you back down. Up, slam, up, slam, up, slam. He gets his face close to yours. It's hard to breathe. You cough and sputter. You can't even smell his breath. You can't speak. The man lowers his voice and says, "She killed herself. She killed herself and her blood is on your hands. I hope the $100 was worth it." Suddenly, you remember her. You remember the woman who bought a sheet of acid off of you. Dark hair, glasses small, pretty nails the color of Arizona green tea cans. You told her to take one at first to see the effects. You told her about HPPD. This was not your fault. This was not your fault. The fear in your gut is replaced by rage. You struggle beneath the man, rolling back and forth on your back until you throw him off. He topples to the side and rolls out of the ring. Immediately, spikes shoot out from the floor all around the ring, sending straw everywhere. The man is impaled, and strings and globulates of blood spurt from his back where the points pierce his flesh. He is only able to give a meek, strangled gasp before he hangs limply from the spikes. The crowd cheers louder, still, and the spikes retreat into the floor as suddenly as they came. The preacher is suddenly beside you and he bellows to the audience,
"The first round of testimony is complete."
They love it. Over and over, you think they can't get any louder, but they do. If they keep this up, you're worried your eardrums will pop. You clutch your head to block out the sound, but of course, it does nothing. The preacher says something you can't catch over the sound of the audience, and then dunks his arms back into the washtub of blood. He pulls out another person. This one you recognize from your Apache days. You remember scoring a few lollies and selling her a couple. You never heard from her again. She tells you she overdosed a few days later. Her 6-year-old son found her body when he came looking for her for breakfast. She still had the stick in her mouth. She doesn't weigh much. It isn't hard to throw her out of the ring. The spikes go through her face, and she doesn't get a chance to scream.
Then there's the guy who got hooked during that brief stint you slung powder. You didn't sell it long because you could barely get it before he bought more and he gave you the creeps. He tells you it ruined his life. He cheated on his wife, lost his kids, got fired from his job, and went to jail. Ultimately, he was murdered in cell block 7. Homemade shiv across the throat and in the back 18 times. He was trying to buy coke. So they come. One by one, all the lives you ever touched, risen out of unholy baptism before you. One by one, you throw them out of the ring into what, for some, was their second death. And after each one, the crowd cheers, "Testify!" We're sick of the word, but you've heard it so much that it lost its meaning. You throw another fen head out of the ring and you're exhausted. Sweat drips from your brow. More than once you've almost met your end. You've almost been pushed out of the ring. But the difference between you and them is that you've got something to live for. You've got a life. Life of what? It's at this moment of realization that a sudden silence ripples over the crowd. The wet sound of a fen head lampooned by the spikes echoes in the barren tent. And in that still moment, trapped in the sticky silence, you realize that you don't have much of a life worth living. We're seeing someone who, if you're honest, you're never going to be serious about. You don't keep in touch with your family. You have some friends, but they mostly hang around to score cheap hits or with the hope that they can cut into your business one day. You think about the lives you've ruined. You think about the woman who killed herself and her devastated husband. You think about Eva lying in a coma and how Alessandra got all of this set up because of her. Would anyone miss you as much as they were missed? On a big open space on the tent wall beside the entrance, a video projects out of nowhere. From your position far away from the center near the edge, you can barely make it out. But you don't need to be close to understand what you see. It's a laundromat. And you're taking out $15 and placing it on top of the washing machine beside Eva. $15. How much is a human life worth? In a slow, low crescendo, the crowd buzzes as the preacher in the center raises his arms and spins slowly. With the good half of his face, the preacher smiles and then dunks his hands back into the wash tub. This time, the figure he retrieves is thin, waif-like, and familiar. You didn't remember the others, but you remember her. Eva. You can't take your eyes from the sight. It really has been about her the entire time. She's small, though, so you know that you can take her out easily. Except, you blink, and now there's a table before the wash tub where there wasn't before. You can barely make out what's on it, but you think you can see a spiked baseball bat. Eva doesn't need as much time as the others to get her footing. She shambles toward the table only a little bit before reaching out a bloody hand. When she raises it, she brandishes a machete. With a scream, she runs for you. You almost step backward, but you're stopped by the memory of the others impaled on spikes. Eva is shockingly fast, sprinting through the ring with the blade high above her head. You try to stammer that you're sorry, try to explain that you didn't mean for any of the things that happened to her to happen, but the crowd's roar consumes your words. You race along the perimeter of the ring, hoping to get some distance between you and her, eyeing the table as you concoct a plan. As you edge closer and closer to the table, you can make out more weapons laid out. A length of heavy chain, a saw, a rusted scythe, an axe. The machete is fast and nimble and looks sharp. You consider the chain for reach and to disarm her, but don't feel confident about your ability to swing it effectively. The scythe is long, too, but appears dull and weak. She's gaining. You only have a few moments to figure it out. You opt for the baseball bat, grabbing it just as Eva is upon you. The machete cuts through the air with a whoosh that sings out above the crowd. It almost catches on your shirt as you narrowly avoid the blade. You stumble backward, nearly tripping on your own feet, but adrenaline courses through your veins like never before, and you catch yourself before you fall. In the same motion, you awkwardly swing the baseball bat. The crowd enters a vicious fever pitch. The preacher is saying something about redemption and sin, and you're sick of it. You're sick of him, and you're sick of all of this. Rage slashes across your heart, and you swing the baseball bat at his face. It cracks into his head, and the nails hammered into the wood stick into his skull. Blood arcs across the straw. Your temper costs you. You manage to rip it out, but not fast enough. Eva swings the machete again, and this time it bites into your arm. The blade digs into your bicep, and bright pain tears into your upper arm. A scream rips through your throat, and you let go of the bat with the injured hand. With your good arm, you swing the bat and miss. You swing it again. Eva jumps back. You push through the pain and grab the saw with your other hand. Gritting your teeth, you throw it at her. She dodges, but only barely. It slices through her shoulder and she screams. Eva chops the machete downward, but you block it with the bat. The force of her blow nearly knocks it out of your hand. You're not playing around anymore, and you recover quickly, swinging it again and again, missing both times. She thrusts the machete forward, then swings it again, but you swing the bat downward. The nails sink into the crown of her head with a wet, sickening crack. It's over. It must be. Eva was the key. She flails backward, ripping the bat from your hand, and you expect her to fall onto her back. But she doesn't. She only takes a few fumbling steps away from you, as if regaining her balance, her face averted upward to the ceiling, and then she steadies herself. Eva slowly brings her gaze back down to you and smiles. "Oh, I don't think so," she sneers. "You won't get rid of me that easily." With the bat still embedded in her skull, she lunges at you, swinging the machete. You're so taken aback that you forget how to move, and the machete slashes across your chest. You cry out and trip over your feet, landing hard on your back. Eva shifts the machete in her hands to point at your chest and stabs downward with her whole body. You manage to roll out of the way just in time. The metal blade clangs out against the concrete beneath the straw. You grit your teeth against the pain in your arm and chest and try pushing yourself up. Eva is faster, though, swinging the machete down on your leg. It buries itself into your calf with a sick thunk. The pain reminds you of the gunshots in the shooting gallery. It stings and burns and shrieks all at once, and you scream too. This is it, you realize. This is the part where you die. You remember what Felix said, that this was the final death, the true death, and you realize that if you die here in the revival tent, you're dead forever. You flip onto your back to at least see the machete as it's coming. Something, perhaps misguided pride, refuses to let you die like a coward. But when you see the fury in Eva's face, the adrenaline burns in your veins so hot and fast that you almost feel like you've left your body. Instincts take over as if you're somewhere else while your body automates. The bat is long, and as she thrusts her body down for a second stab, you reach your hand out while rolling. You grab the bat's handle and tear it out of her skull. The blade sings out again against the concrete. You don't feel the pain as you scramble to your knees and swing out, landing the bat against her gut. It tears at the flesh as you rip it out and swing again. Blood and flecks of flesh spill onto the straw. The blow stuns her almost as much as it did you. She shrieks as you use the bat to push yourself to your feet, and then you swing again. This time, the bat collides with her cheek. The force is so tremendous that her head spins to the side and she drops the machete. Half of Eva's face is shredded with the bent and bloodied nail heads, torn as if by a bear's claw. You swing it in the other direction, rending the same damage to the other side of her face. Then you swing at her chest, and her arms, and her legs. With that blow, she collapses. You hold the bat with your bad arm while you reach down and grip her hair with the other. You drag her to the edge of the ring. You tell her you're sorry. You tell her you wish that there was more you could do for her. You wish you could heal her pain. And then you throw her outside the ring. The spikes shoot up almost immediately, impaling her chest, head, and limbs, tearing her body asunder. There's more of them this time. Perhaps she was a greater force than the others. Perhaps you're imagining things. After all, you're tired. You're so tired. The wild crowd doesn't bother you when you lay down on the straw and close your eyes. You hope it's only sleep that will take you, but you can't be sure. Either way, you need rest. You wake up to the sound of light traffic. When you open your eyes, it is morning. Surrounding you is the alley where you started. The bricks are not moving. Everything is normal. Your body aches, but it is whole. You have a headache and your backpack is before you, ripped apart, and your stash is gone. Thousands of dollars gone. But it's okay. You're whole. That's what matters. The birds chirp the same song you've heard a million times, and the alley stinks like pizza and detergent, the same as it ever has. But you are different. And that makes everything different. You're glad your stash is gone. You're glad you don't have an excuse to go back. You'll start anew. You'll start fresh. You can't erase your mistakes, but you can learn from them.